The rain fell in heavy sheets, drumming against the hospital's roof as Sarah Thompson trudged through the glass doors of St. Mary's Medical Center in Autumn Vale, Pennsylvania. Her sneakers were soaked, leaving faint wet footprints on the polished floor. The clock above the nurse's station read 6:15 a.m., marking the end of another grueling 12-hour night shift in the emergency department. Sarah, a 28-year-old nurse, adjusted her damp jacket and forced a weary smile as her colleague Emma, the head nurse, called out to her. "Sarah, you holding up okay?" Emma's voice was warm but tinged with concern. "I'm fine," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just tired." She fumbled with her umbrella, its dripping fabric a mirror to her exhaustion. The last thing she wanted was for anyone to see the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. But Sarah wasn't fine. Far from it. For months, she had been carrying a secret that gnawed at her insides, a slow, insidious illness that drained her strength with every passing day. She hadn't told anyone, not even her best friend Lily, who worked as a paramedic at St. Mary's. Sarah didn't want pity or the inevitable shift in how people treated her. So she pushed through, dragging herself to work despite the bone-deep fatigue, the aches that radiated through her body, and the fog that clouded her mind. Autumn Vale was a small town, its streets lined with crimson and gold leaves that swirled in the October wind. Sarah's life, however, was anything but picturesque. Between her student loans, rent for her modest apartment, and the rising cost of medical tests she'd been secretly undergoing, her finances were stretched thin. Quitting her job wasn't an option, no matter how much her body begged for rest. The weeks blurred together, each day a battle against her weakening body. Sarah's symptoms worsened. Shortness of breath, persistent fevers, and a cough that wouldn't quit. She ignored them as long as she could, chalking it up to stress or a lingering cold. But one crisp morning in November, she woke to find her body refusing to cooperate. Her limbs felt like lead, and every breath was a knife in her chest. Panic set in as she reached for her phone and dialed 911. Within hours, Sarah found herself back at St. Mary's, not as a nurse, but as a patient. The irony wasn't lost on her as she lay in a sterile hospital bed, the familiar beeps and hums of the monitors now tracking her own vitals. Dr. Michael Carter, a kind-eyed physician she'd never worked with directly, delivered the news with a gentle but firm tone. "Sarah, you have severe pneumonia and it's triggered acute kidney failure," he said, his brow furrowed. "You're lucky you called when you did. Another day or two and we might not have been able to save you." Sarah nodded weakly, her mind reeling. Pneumonia, kidney failure. The words felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else. She wanted to ask questions, but her throat was raw and her energy was sapped. Dr. Carter promised they'd do everything they could, and soon she was hooked up to IVs, oxygen, and a cocktail of medications. After a week in the hospital, Sarah was discharged with strict instructions to rest and follow up with a specialist. She returned to her small apartment, a cozy but cluttered space filled with books, plants, and memories of better days. Her recovery was slow, and the medical bills piled up, adding to her stress. She felt like she was drowning, but she refused to let anyone see her struggle. A few days after her discharge, Sarah's parents, Margaret and Robert Thompson, arrived at her apartment unannounced. Sarah hadn't seen them in months, their relationship strained by years of emotional distance. Margaret was a sharp-tongued woman with a penchant for control, while Robert was quieter, often deferring to his wife's lead. Their sudden appearance caught Sarah off guard. "Why didn't you tell us you were sick?" Margaret demanded, her voice laced with accusation as she stood in Sarah's cramped living room. "We would have been here, you know." Sarah shrank into her couch, pulling a blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I didn't want to worry you," she mumbled, avoiding her mother's piercing gaze. "Don't be ridiculous, Sarah," Robert said, his tone softer but still carrying an edge. "You're our daughter. We're here for you." Sarah wanted to believe them, but something about their visit felt off. Their concerns seemed performative, their questions about her health more probing than caring. When they left, Sarah felt more exhausted than before, as if their presence had drained what little energy she had left. As Sarah lay in bed that night, her thoughts drifted to her late grandmother Eleanor, who had passed away 2 years earlier. Eleanor had been Sarah's rock, the one person who truly understood her. Before her death, Eleanor had made Sarah promise to deliver a sealed envelope to her attorney, Mr. Harrison, if anything ever happened to her. The envelope contained Eleanor's will, but Sarah had never opened it, respecting her grandmother's wishes. Now, with her own mortality staring her in the face, Sarah wondered about the contents of that envelope. The next day, she retrieved it from a locked box under her bed. The paper was yellowed, the seal intact. Sarah's hands trembled as she held it, a strange sense of foreboding washing over her. What if her parents knew about the will? What if they were expecting an inheritance? The thought felt absurd, but it lingered, gnawing at her. Over the next few weeks, Sarah's health fluctuated. Some days she felt strong enough to take short walks. Others, she could barely lift her head from the pillow. Her parents visited again, this time with Sarah's younger sister Claire in tow. Claire, 24 and vibrant, was the golden child in the Thompson family, always doted on by Margaret and Robert. Sarah had always felt like an afterthought in comparison. "How are you feeling, sis?" Claire asked, her voice bright but hollow. She perched on the edge of Sarah's couch, scrolling through her phone as their parents fussed over her. "I'm managing," Sarah said, forcing a smile. She noticed the way her parents exchanged glances, their eyes darting to the corners of her apartment as if cataloging her possessions. It unsettled her, but she pushed the feeling aside. One chilly evening, exactly 4 weeks after her hospitalization, Sarah's parents returned. They claimed it was another check-in, but their demeanor was different, more calculated, less patient. As they left, Sarah overheard them speaking outside her window, their voices carrying through the thin glass. "I can't believe she's still hanging on," Margaret said, her tone dripping with frustration. "I thought she'd be gone by now." "Patience, Margaret," Robert replied, his voice low but cold. "She's not going to last much longer. When she's gone, we'll get everything. The house, the stocks, all of it. The will's outdated anyway. Eleanor left it all to charity, but with Sarah gone, it'll come to us as her only relatives." Sarah's heart stopped. She pressed herself against the wall, her breath shallow as their words sank in. They weren't here out of love. They were waiting for her to die, plotting to claim an inheritance they assumed was theirs. The betrayal cut deeper than any illness, sharper than any pain she'd endured. "They think I'm too weak to fight back," Sarah whispered to herself, tears streaming down her face. "They think I'll just disappear." That night, Sarah made a decision. If her parents thought they could profit from her death, they were wrong. She wasn't going to let them win. With trembling hands, she pulled out a notebook and began to write. She documented everything, every visit, every conversation, every item in her apartment. She listed her modest savings, her grandmother's heirlooms, and the sealed envelope containing Eleanor's will. She wrote about the overheard conversation, her parents' callous words, and their greed. When she finished, Sarah sealed the letter in a new envelope and addressed it to Mr. Harrison, her grandmother's attorney. She also made a copy and hid it in a safe deposit box at her bank, just in case. Exhausted but resolute, she called Lily and asked her to come over. "Sarah, what's going on?" Lily asked, her paramedic instincts kicking in as she saw the pallor of Sarah's face. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Sarah hesitated, then handed Lily the letter. "If anything happens to me, make sure this gets to Mr. Harrison. Promise me." Lily's eyes widened, but she nodded. "I promise. But Sarah, what's this about? Are you okay?" "I will be," Sarah said, her voice firm despite her weakness. "I just need to make things right." Over the next few days, Sarah's health deteriorated rapidly. The pneumonia had left her lungs scarred, and her kidneys were struggling to recover. She knew her time was running out, but she refused to give in to despair. Instead, she focused on her plan. She contacted Mr. Harrison and arranged a meeting. Too weak to leave her apartment, she asked him to come to her. When he arrived, a kindly man in his 60s with a briefcase full of legal documents, Sarah handed him the sealed envelope from her grandmother and her own letter. "Mr. Harrison, I need you to make sure my parents don't get a cent," she said, her voice steady despite the effort it took. "They're waiting for me to die so they can take everything. But I want my grandmother's wishes honored." Mr. Harrison read through both documents, his expression growing somber. "Sarah, your grandmother's will is clear. She left her estate to a children's charity, with you as the executor. If you pass away, the estate remains with the charity unless contested. Your parents could try to claim it, but with this letter, you've given me everything I need to stop them." Sarah nodded, a weight lifting from her chest. "Good. That's all I wanted." 2 weeks later, Sarah's condition worsened, and she was readmitted to St. Mary's. Despite the best efforts of Dr. Carter and the hospital staff, her body couldn't fight anymore. Sarah passed away quietly one night, her friend Lily by her side, holding her hand. But Sarah's story didn't end there. The day after her death, Mr. Harrison executed her final wishes. He submitted her letter to the probate court, along with Eleanor's will. The letter detailed her parents' betrayal, their greed, and their expectation of profiting from her death. It was a damning indictment, supported by Lily's testimony and the sealed envelope. Margaret and Robert were stunned when they learned they would receive nothing. The court upheld Eleanor's will, ensuring that her estate, a modest fortune in stocks, a charming Victorian house, and a collection of heirlooms, went to the children's charity as intended. Sarah's letter also prompted an investigation into her parents' behavior, revealing a pattern of manipulation and financial coercion that extended beyond Sarah's illness. Claire, Sarah's sister, was devastated by the truth about their parents. She distanced herself from Margaret and Robert, choosing to honor her sister's memory by volunteering with the charity that received Eleanor's estate. Lily, too, found purpose in Sarah's legacy, advocating for better support for nurses facing health challenges. In the years that followed, Sarah's story became a quiet legend in Autumn Vale. The charity used Eleanor's estate to fund a new wing at St. Mary's, named the Sarah Thompson Memorial Ward, dedicated to providing free care for uninsured patients. A plaque in the ward bore Sarah's name and a simple inscription, "Her courage lives on." Sarah's letter, though written in her darkest hour, became a beacon of justice. It exposed her parents' greed and ensured that her grandmother's wishes were honored. More than that, it gave Sarah the final word, a testament to her strength, even in the face of betrayal and death. As the crimson leaves of Autumn Vale fell each year, the town remembered Sarah not as a victim, but as a hero who turned her pain into purpose. Her legacy lived on, not in wealth or possessions, but in the lives she touched and the truth she refused to let die.